is my favorite kind of update, a big balancing patch. I'm doing this live. I haven't read any of these patches yet, but let's go and have a look. Okay, balancing, general. Armors with armor rating above 100 now also reduce damage on headshots. Thank for that. Generally, I've avoided heavy armor simply because of exactly that fact. No matter how much armor rating I get, I still get one-shot headshot. I think that's a massive win for heavy armor. Victory poses will now only play for the extracted. Okay, so if you're on the side of the ship as the elevator comes up, you don't get to victory pose when you didn't make it off the planet. Burning damage reduced by 15%. Now I'm interested to see how that plays out. I assume that means from the Hulks that have the flamethrower. Because there's so many times. Again, I still don't think 15% is fixing the problem here. There's a bigger problem with that flamethrower. I don't know if it's headshots or something, but there's many times I've been tapped for one tick of damage from those flamethrowers and just flattened. Something isn't right, and I don't think 15% is going to fix it. The exploding crossbow. Now, I've only had a little go with this. I haven't got that pack with the new explosive weapons in. However, exploding crossbow, slightly smaller explosion. It did seem to have quite a large explosion radius, but that mostly just meant you'd hit yourself more than it would damage more enemies. Increased stagger, I think, from an exploding weapon, and yeah, I'd expect that to do a big amount of stagger. Decreased number of maximum mags from 12 to 8. Yeah, I suppose I haven't used it enough to really tell what impact that has. All I did do with a crossbow is I kept reloading after every shot, feeling like it was single loaded. I constantly kept hitting reload. Increased number of magazines received from resupply. So reduced the max, but increased how much a resupply give you. Oh yeah, okay, right, so the resupply fully... Wait, so what's the point in the stratagem that gives you more resupply then, if it now just gives you max anyway for the crossbow? It's almost if you take the crossbow, don't take the stratagem, even though it's a god tier stratagem. Slight reduction in ergonomics. Reduction? Oh, does that mean they actually have like a mechanic for ergonomics of its turn rate? Have they actually reduced? They actually have a term for that mechanic? Muzzle velocity increased. Muzzle velocity? I think this face says it all. What? Is that supposed to be like recoil or what? The muzzle velocity? I don't know what that's on about. The Quasar Cannon increased recharge time by 5 seconds. Now, I play with a party that are pretty much pure Quasar players, so they're going to hate that. It's the Quasar. It doesn't actually say here in the stratagems menu how that Quasar works, but I believe it's a 15-second cooldown, now 20-second in between shots, so it doesn't have ammo, but previously it would take 15 seconds between shots to recharge your next shot, and now that's changed to 20. It sounded like it needed it, felt like it needed it. It did seem to be top tier. I still think it will be incredibly good. I mean, just not having to reload that is fantastic. It's on the same kind of cooldown as all the other support weapons, so again, every other stat is the same. And it takes about 15 seconds to reload a recoilless without your friend backing you up anyway. Plus, the recoilless has a penalty of you need a backpack, where Quasar doesn't, so no backpack, no ammo, reloads while it's on your back, so you don't even have to stop to do it. It's just a great gun. 20 seconds is still an acceptable amount. BR-14 Adjudicator. Which one is the Adjudicator? Ooh, BR-14. Right, yes, the Adjudicator is also from the detonation pack. Is the assault rifle. Again, I've barely touched this gun, but I feel like it was more like a marksman kind of feel. It was semi-auto, if I remember correctly. Full auto is now the default mode on the Adjudicator rather than the semi-auto. Reduction in recoil. Increase the maximum mags from 6 to 8, so you've got more of a reserve. Increased number of magazines received from the resupply. Once again, just balanced out that you get max magazines from a resupply. Now placed amongst assault rifles. Yes, from what I'd heard of the Adjudicator, it fell into the marksman area, but most people were using it as a full auto thing. So it seems the devs have just followed suit with how people were using this weapon. Right, next we have the laser cannon. So we're heading back into the stratagems. Laser cannon, slightly increased damage and slightly reduced damage versus large volume bodies. So I guess a little bit of a buff, but that sounds like they're expecting you to have a bit more precision with it. I'm not entirely sure what it means by a large volume body. I can only assume that means the walking factories, the tanks, the Bile Titans, those are large in volume. I could only assume it's kind of increased damage, especially if you hit those crit spots, but maybe it's less damaging against those armored platings on large enemies. The Punisher Plasma. So that's the kind of grenade launching shotgun from the energy pack. So decrease in the maximum mag so you get fewer reserves. Seems to be a similar patch across the board on a lot of weapons, reducing their max reserves, increasing how much a resupply gives you. I suppose on your spawn and on death, you're starting with less ammo there, and you're going to have to make use of those resupply charges that you can call in. And you're going to have to make better use of the ammo you find around the map. Increase the projectile speed, but we'll still keep a similar range. Okay, so somehow managed to keep the arc in check while increasing its projectile speed. Interesting. Decreased damage fall off on the explosion. Decreased damage fall off. Decreased damage fall off on the explosion. So if it's decreased the fall off, that means it's doing more damage for more of that explosion radius. That's how I'm interpreting that, that's a buff. Now placed in the energy weapons category. I suppose that makes sense, it wasn't really a shotgun at the end of the day. Arc 12 Blitzer, so that's the one on the next page. I don't think I've even seen this gun. I'm pretty sure I've never picked this up. Increased shots per minute from 30 to 45, so fire rate increase, now an energy weapon. The Eruptor. Also not sure if I have had really much of a chance to play with this gun. Is the sniper rifle from the explosives pack. Same again, it's having its reserves decreased. Explosion damage drops off slightly faster. Explosion damage drops off slightly faster. Now I'm confused again. So is that saying they've increased the damage fall off, or is that saying that over the bullet distance traveled, it reduces the explosion damage the further the shot is? I'm confused. Explosion damage drops off slightly faster. The faster bit, I think, is what's confusing me here. I don't understand what time measurement is calculated in how much damage an explosion does. Are they saying that that explosion radius disappears faster so it can't catch people walking into the explosion? Again, if you know what that's on about, comment below. Am I being stupid? Sickle, another amazing weapon from a pack I don't have. Decreased amount of magazines from 6 down. A quick edit in post here, because this one really confused me. So the magazines are the spare heatsink reserve, so if you overheat your weapon too many times, you eat away at your spare heatsinks. This is just something I've never realized happens, because I've never overheated a weapon that many times. Okay, yeah, and then the Scythe is the default pack energy weapon. Increased damage, that sounds alright, so 300 to 350 is a significant chunk of damage. So the Railgun. Big fan of the Railgun, let's see what they've done to it. Increased armor penetration in both safe mode and unsafe mode. Stagger force slightly reduced. The stagger was pretty strong on this. I imagine it probably still is if it's only a slight reduction. Just landing those headshots on a Hulk does give it a good shunt. A well-placed shot can keep those heavy enemies at bay. The heavy machine gun, third person crosshair enabled. I think the only thing you're doing with a heavy machine gun is spraying and praying, so I don't think a crosshair is going to do much. The Diligence, another one getting tweaks. It had tweaks last time, what has it got this time? Another damage increase. Ergonomics improved. If for any reason any of you watched my last video on this, this is exactly what I was talking about. Sounds like a good time to give it another go. I'm definitely going to be picking this back up again and seeing how this plays. And the standard Diligence also got a damage buff. Another one I probably should pick up again. I've kind of moved on to mostly taking the Diligence counter sniper if I wanted to take a semi-auto rifle, but I do think there are occasions the Diligence has its time to shine. Generally, again, on its increased ergonomics over the Diligence counter sniper. Okay, but then we have our machine pistol, the Redeemer. Slight increase in recoil. Peacemaker, which is the original pistol, increased damage from 60 to 75. I'm down for that. I still take the Peacemaker over the Redeemer for some strange reason. Because, I mean, statistically, looking at the screen, they had the same damage output, and you could just take the Redeemer and put it on semi-auto, and you would just have a better version than the Peacemaker. But for me, it was a reload speed. I would take it for the reload speed on the Peacemaker. And then Senator, there are all these Ps. Okay. The ones that start with P are all pistols. Senator, increasing damage. Speed loader added when reloading on an empty cylinder. Speeds of reload on empty considerably. That's really exciting. I like the idea of that. So if you're moving between fights and you've got time to just reload on the run, you can do your slow reloads. But if you've got to empty your mag and get back in the fight, speed reload, yeah, I'm down for that. Dagger. So Dagger is the laser pistol from the energy pack as well. Don't think I've seen this in action yet, but it'll be another heat gun. If this says it's increased the mag again, no, okay, increased damage from 150 to 200. Surely that's a 33% increase from 150, adding 50, that, yeah, maths. That's a big chunk of damage. If anyone's got that pack, give that dagger a go. The Liberator. So the Liberator, that is the default rifle. It seems now that everyone's getting leveled in the game. They've gone back and given a bit of a buff to some of the earlier weapons to see them come back into the rotation. But the Liberator has 5 more damage per bullet. When you're firing 45 rounds per mag, that adds up to a good chunk of damage. That's pretty good. The Liberator Concussive, which is the originally cold explosive but no longer cold explosive, it's more of a stagger rifle. I think it had a little bump in the last patch, but now it's got another 10 damage in this patch, increasing from 55 to 65. However, after seeing that patch note, if you actually read the description in the game, so the standard Liberator is the standard assault rifle, balancing power, fire rate, and weight for a reliable weapon against smaller targets. You can go to the Liberator Concussive, which is the same weapon with a C on the end, the AR-23C. The modified Liberator, firing concussive rounds, which do less damage but stagger enemies. But since this patch, it now actually does 5 more damage. There's 5 more damage, higher recoil, and lower magazine capacity. And half the fire rate. So I mean, you are trading a lot of stats off to get that concussive ability added onto the end. But again, I've used this gun a fair amount. It's actually pretty interesting. But what you've got to add up is yes, it's great to have the staggering of the concussive shots, but why fire 3 shots to slow the enemy down where you could fire 1 that actually just kills it in the first place? There are times the concussive comes in really useful, but a lot of the time I just take a diligence and shoot them in the head. Anyway, JAR 5 Dominator, damage decreased from 300 to 75. I don't think that's even enough. JAR is probably my main weapon at the moment. Again, I've come from the before I was using the counter sniper. I ended up on the JAR after the last patch buffed its damage from 200 to like 300. It might have even been more than that. It got a massive chunk of damage. You can pop semi-auto shots with this JAR, doing far more damage than any of the other semi-auto weapons in this game. The downside to the JAR is a slow firing projectile, so there's no scope to it, and if you're trying to shoot something on the run, it's very difficult. Luckily, there aren't a lot of enemies that run across your screen sideways. They're usually running at you, or they're robots stood in the distance shooting at you. So it doesn't take a lot to get used to, but once you do get used to that, the projectile speed, the JAR is 25 damage less is not going to stop it being an amazing weapon. Okay, so the next is the Guard Dog, but we are not looking for the Energy Bay Guard Dog, as the Energy Bay Guard Dog has the last 5, which is the Scythe. Has the Scythe attached to it. We're looking at the Robotics Guard Dog, has the AR-23, which is the Liberator, the default assault rifle. So that has had a damage decrease of 30%. That's a fairly hefty nerf, but hopefully that's a nerf to friendly fire damage as well. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to unlock the Airburst rocket launcher when it was clearly bugged for the weekend when we got to try the 2 different stratagems, but here we are, we have the Airburst. Have they fixed it? Airburst rocket launcher will no longer detonate when shot near stratagems, HMG turret sentries, resupplies, and other Helldivers. Reduce proximity radius. That still doesn't cover all the instances I've seen the Airburst blow up in my face. So yes, I think we figured out that if you were near other Helldivers, it was blowing up in our faces. We realized the proximity radius seemed to be absurd. I didn't realize that turrets were setting it off. There's definitely instances over that weekend when I had fired an airburst with no one else nearby into the sky, and it just detonated in my face. My only guess on that detonating is that I myself was setting off the proximity, which this might fix, but I'm still not convinced that airburst is safe to use. I think there's still bugs there that need ironing out, but we'll see how that plays out. Right, and then into stratagems, we're already in the bay. Machine gun sentry, the MG43, which is the first machine gun sentry to unlock. Increased health to match other sentries. Okay, didn't realize it had less, but cool. And the Tesla Tower, increased health by 33%. Okay. And the spear, what have they done to the spear? Because I've had a little bit of play with the spear. It's all right. Added reload stage reload after the spent missile has been discarded. Now, I did notice that. I did notice the spear didn't seem to save a partial reload like many other weapons do, so that's definitely going to help. I mean, it's not the buff it needs, but it definitely helps. Airburst rocket launcher in square brackets list. Okay, so we're now on to enemies. Bile Spewer and Nursing Spewers, move speed slightly reduced. I mean, that sounds good to me. Just gives you a bit more of a chance to run away and avoid that spew. That sounds fine by me. Hulks. Force required for them to stagger is slightly increased. Yeah, fair enough. So their stagger resistance is up. sounds fine. There were some weapons that were really, really good at staggering them, so let's see how that plays out. Especially, as I said earlier, with the railgun being quite good at staggering the Hulks, that having its stagger reduced and the Hulks having their stagger resistance buffed, that's going to be a little bit scary. Hulk Scorcher, direct flamethrower, damage reduced by 20%. Love to see that. I mentioned that earlier with the Hulk flamethrowers just one-shotting out of nowhere. So we've had fire damage reduced and that Scorcher flamethrower damage reduced. I think that's a great change. Devastator fire rate slightly increased, only the standard Devastator, that sounds fine. Like, gunships sideways movement slightly increased. Okay, but I guess just makes them slightly harder to hit, a bit more mobile, but if it's... No, Scout Strider Riders now less vulnerable to explosions. I hope that doesn't stop impact grenades just taking them out, because that still seems like a pretty genuine strat. I don't feel like that needs to be nerfed. A grenade is a massive resource to spend on a Strider. I can only assume this is a change due to the new explosives pack, probably making it really easy to knock those Striders off. With the reduced radius some of the weapons receive this patch, and that how greater resistance is going to stop people being able to shoot the floor underneath riders with an explosive crossbow and knock them out so easily. Probably still can, but just won't be as easy. Fog generators health and armor increased. Does that mean the mushrooms, or is there like something else generating fog? Gunship spawners now have a much lower cap on how many gunships they can have active. That seems fair. We've had some tough times taking out some spawners sometimes and had to deal with like 10 gunships of the air at the same time. That's pretty mental. So it seems only fair to limit how many gunships are going to be active at one time. Enemy patrols. Patrol spawning has been increased when there are fewer than 4 players. The fewer the players, the bigger the change. 4-player missions, there will be no change compared to before. The biggest notable change will be for solo players at higher difficulties. Okay, so imagine they've just tweaked the scaling of how many Helldivers are in a party, really, and how many patrols you come across. Gameplay made minor level generation improvements to how we distribute locations throughout the mission map. This should improve variation in distance between objectives, and objectives will likely not spawn as far away from each other as often as before. So it sounds like they've just tweaked how whatever algorithm they have in place to choose where objectives scatter on the map and just made them a bit more equidistance, I guess, a bit nicer flow. It seems to be talking particularly on objectives here, not points of interest. Whether they count those as the same thing, I'm not sure. It's an interesting thing to think about, because if they're clustering objectives together, that's going to start leaving part of the map just being the exploration part for points of interest. That is if they are 2 separate things in this instance. So you imagine if you've got to take out bunkers and all the bunkers are in one half of the map and the other half of the map's just empty, it gives you more opportunity to just rush the main objective rather than explore. It depends how much they've tweaked it, but it might end up kind of splitting the map a little. We'll see how that plays out. Added setting in the options menu, gameplay section, to disable automatic climbing and vaulting while sprinting. Get in! Let's have it. The Spread Democracy mission, otherwise known as Raise the Flag, can now be enjoyed on higher difficulties for maximum freedom spreading. I saw a post about this, I think, the other day, or a comment somewhere. Interesting to see it got picked up on, and it's been like 3 days later they've actually added it. So I've never done this mission. I had no idea what this meant, because they mentioned it in the first line of the patch. Again, when they say it can now be enjoyed on higher difficulties, it doesn't say what number that goes to. It might still stop at level 7, I don't know, but they might have just made it available for all difficulty levels, who knows. When readying up, Helldivers now salute to ensure maximum democratic readiness. I love that, I love that, I love that. Honestly, I'm shocked that wasn't already in the game. I imagine they've been wanting to add this for a while. I find it hard to believe they didn't already plan to have this done months ago. I'm sure it just ended up on the nice to haves list of their tasks. Someone finally got around to doing it. Added ambience to the tremor planetary hazard to underline the severity so Helldivers can react accordingly. Definitely like that. Yeah, I remember with the tremors, the only notification I really got was, yes, my character stumbled, and then I mostly knew because it was saying it in red text at the top of my screen. So if they're going to add some smoke and cracks to the ground to make it obvious, that sounds like a nice quality of life change to me. Shots that ricochet from heavy armored enemies will now properly hit the Helldiver who fired them. Trigger discipline is highly recommended. I didn't realize that it didn't work before, so I have seen this, you know, with the shielded Devastators. If you shoot them with like a railgun or a anti-tank sniper and you hit that shield, it does not penetrate, it will ricochet off. And I've seen it with a railgun where the bullets blast like a meter from my head because you can watch it bounce off that shield and fly past you. I thought it was just going to be a random chance that eventually one could hit me. It sounds like the way this sentence is worded is that that wasn't a possibility anyway. That even if it did go through your player model, that it wasn't actually going to damage you. Sounds like it now damages you. I don't know if that now means it's guaranteed. If you're saying that every time I fire a railgun at a shielded Devastator and I get hit by it every single time, no, surely it's still just a chance. It must be. That'd be insane if every ricocheted bullet hits you. But I assume this now caters to everything. I mean, if you're machine gunning down a Titan, you're machine gunning a tank with weapons that don't have armor penetrating, you're putting your team at risk, which that sounds hilarious. But now we have just a huge list of crash fixes, as well as some other issues. I'm just going to have a quick skim read and see if anything stands out to me. Fixed an exploit that allowed overeager Helldivers to use grenades excessively. I had seen some videos about being able to exploit grenade spamming. I didn't watch it, don't know how it works, but it sounds like they've fixed it. Fixed anti-materiel rifle, facing away from the Helldiver after deploying it. That hadn't clocked on to me, but now that you mention it, that sounds like, yeah, I could see that being a problem. It did feel like I was always awkwardly having to find my way to the anti-material rifle, and I didn't realize that was just a genuine bug that was doing that every single time. Fixed bug where anti-material rifle would consume an extra magazine after a cancelled reload. Again, one I hadn't realized was happening, but I definitely felt like something was going wrong there. I definitely felt like a few times I'd finished an anti-material rifle, I'd seen the magazine deplete, swap weapon or something, swap back, finished the partial reload and lost another magazine. I had noticed that, but I doubted myself. Clearly, my subconscious had correctly clocked onto something there. I just never investigated it. Regardless, it is now fixed. Fixed bug where recoilless rifle would consume an extra shell from the backpack if the reload was cancelled just after the shell was inserted, but before the reload was complete. Again, same issue there. I'm sure I'd noticed that and just doubted myself. Fixed issue where the sickle and quasar cannon could not shoot through foliage. Absolutely love to see it. Oh yes, as I have a party of Helldivers that pretty much exclusively use the sickle and quasar cannon, so I've heard that one a lot. They're going to be very happy to see that fix. Mines are now pingable for better coordination with your team. That's a nice little quality of life change right there. Key bindings bound to numpad will no longer reset upon start. Didn't know that was a bug, but that sounds like a great bug to fix. I'm sure there's some people who are very happy to see that one in there. Playing rock, paper, scissors in front of the ship no longer causes players to fall out into space. I hadn't seen that one either, but damn, I'm annoyed I missed it. Anti-material rifle and heavy machine gun now trigger hit markers while scoped in. Another one that was annoying. Love to see that fixed as well. They've also spelt anti-material wrong. It's an anti-materiel rifle. And lastly, as seems to be the trend with these patch notes, is a list of known issues. Some of these seem to carry over from the previous one that they've still not been able to fix with the social and friends crossovers. Seems to have a long list of problems. And yes, they have acknowledged it now. So I'd noticed this before the last patch, and they didn't mention it in the patch. Damage over time effects may only apply when dealt by the host. We expect to have this fixed in the next patch. So yes, I'd seen this. I think the napalm, the incendiary shotgun, all of those things, the effects of fire do nothing unless you are the host. I think I briefly touched on this in the last video with the last patch notes, but now it is acknowledged in the known issues. So praying for a fix in the next patch, and I'm praying that it's soon, because I'd love to see the incendiary shotgun and napalm get the recognition it deserves. They are aware of the misalignment. I think they've mentioned this before as well on some of the scopes. Arc weapons sometimes misfiring. Almost feels like that's a feature of the arc weapons, but apparently that's a bug. Spears targeting is inconsistent. Damn right it is, making it hard to lock onto the larger enemies. Yep. Stratagem beam might attach itself to an enemy, but it will deploy to its original location. Again, I thought that was a feature, but apparently no. Apparently you are supposed to get killed if you attach a stratagem to something hitting you in the face. Yes, okay, I thought this was fixed, but apparently no, you still get 100% liberation at the end of every defend mission. Cool. Once again, a really, really nice list of balance changes. Definitely definitely feels like these devs know what they're doing and making smart decisions. Nice to see that some of the issues I've been having are being acknowledged by the team and getting worked on. It is a shame I'm falling behind with having access to all the weapons when I don't pay for any super credits. I may have to go and try and farm some. After paying full price for the game, I'm struggling to justify paying to get to access weapons, but one day they might win. Damn you, capitalism. That sounds like traitor talk, and on that note, I'm out of here.